1991, a quiet woman from Tennessee stood up at a UFO conference and told the audience something that should have gotten her laughed out of the room. She said she was not born on Earth. She said she came from Venus, and then, instead of laughing, people started listening. Because the story she told connected dots that nobody had ever connected before. A Russian boy who claimed to remember a past life on Mars. A man in California who spent 40 years relaying messages from a being who predicted, decades in advance, events that sound uncomfortably like the 2020s. And two small, strange bodies that were carried into the Mexican Congress in September of 2023 and laid out under glass in front of stunned lawmakers. 3 stories, 3 different decades, 3 people who never met each other, and yet, somehow, they all seem to be telling pieces of the same story. By the end of this video, you'll know all 3 cases in full, what science actually says about each one, and where the evidence stands today. Some of what you're about to hear has been challenged, some has been debunked, and some of it no one has been able to explain. I'll tell you which is which as we go. Let's start with a little boy in Russia. In 2004, the Russian newspaper Pravda published a story that raced around the world. A 7-year-old boy named Boriska, born in 1996, could reportedly hold his head up just days after birth and was reading and writing before the age of 2. But the part that made people stop cold was what the boy said himself. He told his parents that in a previous life, he had lived on Mars. And he didn't just say it once and forget it, the way children do. He described the planet, its conditions, details of a civilization there that weren't in any book he could have read. When researchers sat down with Boriska, many of them came away shaken by how fluently a small child discussed astronomy. Stories spread online, claiming that even Stephen Hawking had commented on the case. Now, I'll be straight with you, no one has ever produced a reliable record of Hawking actually saying that, so treat that part as internet legend. But the boy himself was real, the Pravda article was real, and the questions his case raised were very real. And here's the thing, Boriska was not the first. 13 years earlier, in 1991, an American woman went public with a claim that made the Mars boy look tame. Her name was Omnec Onec, and she said plainly and calmly that she was a woman from Venus, sent to Earth on a mission to help humanity. And if you take her seriously, even just for the length of this video, a whole series of unexplained mysteries suddenly seem to click into place. So take a breath, open your imagination. We're going back, way back, to a time before the Earth itself was born. But first, 1955, a year saturated with UFO sightings across the United States, and according to her account, the year she arrived on this planet. Omnec said she was brought, at what appeared to be 7 years old, to a remote temple in Tibet, where lamas taught her to adapt to Earth's gravity and atmospheric pressure. That temple, she claimed, had served for thousands of years as a way station where visitors from other worlds learned to live on Earth. Now, she looked like a 7-year-old girl, but by Earth's calendar, she said she was already 130 years old. And before you gasp at that number, she added that 130 isn't even old where she came from, because the average lifespan on Venus, she claimed, is about 500 years. In that temple, she wasn't just adjusting to the environment. She was adjusting to her own body, talking, eating, using the bathroom. The basic things every Earth toddler has to learn, she was learning for the first time. Why? Because, according to Omnec, Venusians don't have physical bodies at all. They exist as beings of pure consciousness, as spirit, in what she called a finer dimension of light. We can't see them. But as she put it, invisible does not mean non-existent. And to complete her mission on Earth, she had to squeeze herself into this new skin and make it work. And what was that mission? To tell humanity about a chapter of history that was erased. According to Omnec, Venus isn't the only inhabited world in our solar system. Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn have beings too. And all of them, long, long ago, came here from 4 different star systems, arriving when our solar system was so young that Earth didn't even exist yet. They came, she said, because a great spiritual teacher in the universe wished to bring human life into this corner of the galaxy. Here's the detail that matters. The beings on Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn have all since evolved upward into that dimension of light that our eyes cannot perceive. But when they first arrived, they were physical, flesh and blood. The same stage Earth is at right now. And that, she said, is why we can find what look like ruins of cities on Mars, and yes, on Venus too. Those ruins were built by these beings back when they still had material bodies. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Ruins on Mars, fine, I've heard those claims. But Venus? Really? Yes, according to this story, Venus as well, and supposedly even more of them. Hold that thought, because we're coming back to it with satellite images before this section is done. Back to Omnec. She said that when Venusian civilization reached a certain level, they were ready to ascend into the light dimension. But at exactly that moment, a portion of the people on Venus, Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter refused to go. Why would anyone refuse paradise? Because the physical world they lived in had a hierarchy, a class system, and those at the top didn't want to give up what they held. Just then, the Earth had newly formed into a livable planet. So the ones who would not let go of their power came here instead. And according to Omnec, the settlers from those four worlds are the ancestors of every human being alive today. Venus gave rise to the white race, Mars, the yellow race, Jupiter, the black race, Saturn, the red race. By her account, we are all, every one of us, descendants of extraterrestrials. If that's true, it would explain why the origin of modern humans remains so stubbornly full of gaps. We didn't fully originate here, and it would explain something darker. We are still stuck in the physical world because our ancestors chose power over ascension, and that choice is why we're still here, in bodies that age and break. But Omnec said, we didn't arrive empty-handed. Humanity originally possessed two abilities that have since vanished: telepathy and the memory of past lives. So where did they go? According to her, not long after our ancestors settled here, another extraterrestrial civilization arrived. Which one? Which one? She said she wasn't permitted to reveal that. It wasn't part of her task. But these newcomers made a pact with humanity's ruling class, the same people who benefited most from the old hierarchy. Together, they wanted permanent control over the human population. And you can see the problem. If every human being can read minds, you cannot deceive them and you cannot control them. Past life memory was just as inconvenient because a person who remembers dying and returning does not fear death the way a ruler needs them to. So, Omnec claimed they altered the human genetic code. They divided the brain into two hemispheres, walling off telepathy and past life memory. But before they did it, they preserved the erased knowledge, the true history and the accumulated wisdom of humanity. And that archive, she said, still exists today, held by a small circle at the very top. Only they know. She also spoke about the soul. Every person, she said, carries one, a pure, indestructible energy. The body dies. The soul does not. Each lifetime is a set of lessons, joy and suffering both. And when all the lessons are complete, the soul either continues the cycle or rises out of this dimension entirely. Sound familiar? It's strikingly close to what many of the world's religions have taught for thousands of years. Tibetan Buddhism even preserves accounts of realized lamas whose bodies, at the moment of death, dissolve into light, leaving behind only hair or fingernails. The rainbow body, they call it. In Omnec's language, that is simply a soul that finished its lessons, leaving the physical dimension for a higher one. She described her homeworld too. Venus, she said, has plants and animals much like Earth. The difference is that their whole world has shifted up into that light dimension, vibrating at a frequency too high for human eyes. Your eyes can only see electromagnetic waves in a narrow band. Anything outside that band is invisible to you, yet completely real. Radio waves fill the room you're sitting in right now, and you can't see a single one. When a Venusian touches an object in their world, they feel it. If you could reach into their world, you'd feel almost nothing, at most a faint sensation of something slipping past. And because of that high frequency, she said, they don't eat. They draw energy straight from the universe. They bear children, though pregnancy runs longer than ours. One more odd detail. A Venusian heart beats faster than a human heart. Now here's where it gets strange. Years later, a man named Phil Schneider, who claimed to have helped build secret underground facilities for the US government, said publicly that inside Area 51 there was a being from Venus. He described him as looking like a white man with platinum blonde hair, but with an unusually large heart and a lifespan of around 490 years. I can't verify Schneider's story, and you shouldn't take it as proof. But notice how closely those details, the big fast heart, the 500-year lifespan, match what Omnec had been saying all along. Two people, two separate stories, one description. So if Venusians vibrate at a frequency we can't see, how could one ever appear to us in the flesh? Omnec's answer was a city. On Venus, she said, there is a portal city that sits on the boundary between the light dimension and the physical one, a vast gateway bridging two worlds. Any Venusian, or any visitor from another world, who needs to appear physically on Earth, goes there first and undergoes a lowering process. They slow the vibration of their body until it condenses into solid flesh, and by her account, it is an extremely unpleasant experience. Once she had a physical body, Omnec traveled to Tibet by ship, a flying ship, the kind we call a UFO, and she explained how it works too. No fuel. It flies on magnetic force, a perfectly clean energy. And the reason we so rarely see UFOs comes back, again, to vibration. Think of an electric fan. When the blades spin fast enough, you can see right through them to the wall behind. A flying saucer is the same. Only when it slows its frequency does it become visible to human eyes. After her training in Tibet, she was sent to Tennessee to take the place of a little girl who had just died in a road accident. Not to imitate her appearance, to assume her life. The girl had been raised by her grandmother alone in a remote area, so almost no one knew. And for the next 35 years, Omnec lived an ordinary, quiet American life, waiting. Until 1990, when, she said, the signal came. It was time to tell humanity the truth. Her warning was simple. Her people had watched many physical civilizations grow brilliant with technology and then rot from the inside because their spiritual growth never kept pace and they destroyed themselves. If we learn our real history and raise our souls alongside our science, we can still turn away from that cliff. She knew most people wouldn't believe her. The Venus she described sits outside the reach of our five senses, and she understood that. Her job, she said, was only to tell us. Believing is our choice. But before you choose, consider two more things. First, an internet researcher studying radar images of Venus from NASA's Magellan probe claimed to have found what looked like the remains of large structures and used 3D reconstruction software to restore their shapes. The results show right angles and clusters of forms packed closely together, like the ruins of a city. Skeptics say it's just pareidolia, our brains finding patterns in noise. And honestly, they may be right, but set the images next to ancient ruins on Earth, and the resemblance is uncomfortable. Second, and this one is solid science. Venus today is a furnace, the second planet from the Sun, hot enough to melt lead at nearly 900 degrees Fahrenheit under clouds of sulfuric acid, about the least hospitable place imaginable. And yet, in recent years, planetary scientists using NASA climate models have argued that 3 billion years ago, Venus may have looked a lot like Earth, a world with liquid water, possibly for most of its history until roughly 700 million years ago, when something catastrophic transformed it into the hell we see now. What exactly happened? To this day, nobody knows. So a woman nobody believed says Venus was once alive and that its people moved beyond our sight. And modern science, decades later, quietly confirms at least the first half. It was once a water world. Is it possible? just possible that something is still there, one dimension out of reach? Hold that question, because in 1983, in a small California city, an ordinary man was about to become the second voice in this story, and the messages that came through him would include predictions about quantum computers, about new energy, about the exact years we are living through right now. His name was Darryl Anka, and overnight, this unremarkable American developed an ability that made him famous. He could, he claimed, speak on behalf of an extraterrestrial. What made his session so magnetic was the format. Question and answer, live, interactive. Anyone could ask anything about alien civilizations, about technology, about what happens after death, and above all, about the future. Remember, there was no internet then, no live streams, yet his fame spread the old way, person to person. The conversations went on for more than 40 years, and part of what came out of them is now known as the Bashar prophecies. Here's what makes this worth your next 20 minutes. Within those prophecies is a description of a new golden age and two well-known modern seers, the Indian astrologer Abhigya Anand and the British psychic Craig Hamilton Parker, have each independently pointed to our own era right now as its beginning. So who or what is Bashar? Every week on a fixed evening, cars would pack the streets around Anka's home, and people would line up for hours. Around 8 o'clock, Anka would sit in a chair facing the audience, close his eyes, and go still. A few moments later, his posture would change, his voice would change, and Bashar would begin taking questions, usually about 10 of them over 3 hours, while an assistant wrote everything down. People like Anka are usually called channelers, mediums, who claim to lend their bodies as instruments for another consciousness. Why him? Anka said that after twice seeing a UFO at close range, in broad daylight, he threw himself into studying psychic phenomena, and that this is what made him a candidate. The being that spoke through him said its people have no names, no need for them, but agreed to be called Bashar, a word which in Arabic connects to the idea of a bringer of news, a messenger. Bashar claimed to come from a world called Esasani, meaning place of living light, located about 500 light-years away, toward the constellation Orion. But, and this is the catch, not in our dimension. Humanity, Bashar said, lives in the third dimension. His people live in the fifth. Point our best telescopes at that region of space and you will never see them. He described his world, too, a planetary axis with almost no tilt, so there are barely any seasons. Think Miami, Florida, all year round, abundant water, dense green vegetation, rich oxygen like the great forests of Canada. The animals are all gentle, and his people live in cities that float in the sky. He even claimed that a human being could adapt to Esasani almost immediately, partly because the gravity and atmosphere are similar, and partly for reasons, he said, that humans were not yet ready to understand. Some of what Bashar said sounds less like an alien and more like a Zen master. He once compared the universe's balance of positive and negative to the two faces of a coin, 50-50. But there's a third position, he said, the edge. And the edge changes everything, because the moment the coin tilts even slightly, 50-50 becomes 51-49. Some people live stuck on the negative face of the coin, and moving to the positive face isn't the brutal struggle we imagine. You just have to find your way to the edge, and everything begins to shift. But the sessions people still argue about are the ones on aliens and the future. Has Earth been visited? Yes, Bashar said. Many civilizations have come. Earth, as he put it, is like a scenic stop on a cosmic highway, and extraterrestrials are like tourists who pause, look around, take their equivalent of photographs, and move on. Rarely more than 10 civilizations are here at any one time, and not all visitors come from space. There is, he claimed, a civilization associated with the interior of the Earth. All of these groups have signed an agreement. No open interference in human affairs. No public appearances in broad daylight. Quiet observation only. What about the grays, the small gray beings from 1,000 abduction stories? Bashar's answer was disturbing. The grays, he said, are not aliens at all. They are humans from a parallel version of Earth who destroyed their environment and mutated into the diminished forms we see, losing the ability to reproduce. Their program of mixing human DNA is a desperate attempt to save their dying line. Was Roswell real? Yes, said Bashar. A craft did crash near Roswell in 1947, and the Army's weather balloon story was a screen, though, he added, a reasonable one, because humanity was not ready. The crash itself, he explained, wasn't caused by any human weapon. The pilot and the ship were joined as a single living system, and a powerful lightning strike disrupted that connection, knocking the pilot unconscious. The ship went down. Did we reverse engineer the wreckage? Some technology did seep into human society, Bashar said, but far less than people imagine, because most of what was recovered was simply beyond our ability to understand. Then someone asked the obvious question. If that ship crossed interstellar space, did it travel faster than light? And Bashar's answer surprised everyone. No, even we cannot exceed the speed of light, he said. In this space-time, nothing can. But hyperspeed was never the only way to cross the stars. The method most civilizations use is teleportation. The universe, he explained, is a body of matter and energy vibrating at countless different frequencies. Determine the frequency of the place you want to be, tune your ship to match it, and you are there. In the blink of an eye. If that reminds you of quantum entanglement, two particles linked so that they respond to each other instantly across any distance, you're not alone. The difference is that humans can't yet extend that property to an object as large as a ship. And there was one more piece. Human science, Bashar observed, studies matter and consciousness as two separate things, two fields with nothing to say to each other. But the core of advanced technology in the universe is precisely the art of applying consciousness to matter. An alien craft, he said, is sentient. It is a living being. The pilot doesn't steer it. The pilot merges with it, mind to mind, the ship becoming the body and the pilot becoming the brain. That is how they teleport at will. Is there a civilization inside the Earth? Bashar's answer was very him. Yes and no. The interior of the Earth is not a hollow physical space with cities in it. Rather, there is a special dimension folded inside, and if your vibration can enter that dimension, you will experience what seems like a world inside the planet. It exists, just not in the way we think of existing. And who governs all these civilizations? At this question, Bashar paused for a long moment. Then he said, the truly higher beings, the ones you call God. He talked about many other things, Tesla, dreams, the world after death. We don't have time for all of it today. But the part you came for, the part everyone came for, was the future. And Bashar's view of time itself is the key to his predictions. Time, he said, is a sensation experienced by living beings. Past, present, and future all exist simultaneously across countless parallel universes, and the future is not fixed. Your body is trapped in the three dimensions you can perceive. Your consciousness is not. It can cross between parallel universes in an instant, and at the level of the Creator, there is no time at all. No beginning, no end. All of the past and all of the future held at once. With that understanding, here is what Bashar said he saw. And remember, these statements were recorded in the 1980s and 1990s. He said that, after around 2005, quantum technology would flood into everyday human life, and that quantum computers would reach a major breakthrough around 2024. Judge that one for yourself. In December 2024, Google announced a quantum chip called Willow that solved, in minutes, a problem that would take the fastest supercomputers longer than the age of the universe. He said humanity would discover a new clean energy source, call it free energy, emerging around 2020 and maturing around 2024 to 2025 before spreading widely. In late 2022, American scientists at the National Ignition Facility announced the first controlled fusion reaction to produce more energy than it consumed, a breakthrough the world had chased for 70 years. Mature fusion power would, in principle, be limitless. Make of that what you will. He said that 1947, the year of Roswell, began a new cycle for humanity the moment we started to suspect we are not alone and began building rockets and listening for signals. The cycle runs in 45-year arcs. From 1947 to 1987, we discovered that other intelligences exist. From 1987 to 2027, messengers from other worlds would speak through human channelers. Sightings would multiply, and governments would stop treating the subject as a joke. And after 2027, a third phase, in which sightings and even contact accelerate because, he claimed, the civilizations have agreed on a window for open contact with humanity, beginning sometime between 2025 and 2033, with 2027 as the year of acceleration. After 2027, he said, the question will no longer be whether they exist. Look around. In the years since 2017, the Pentagon has confirmed Navy UFO videos as genuine. Congress has held public hearings on unidentified phenomena, and NASA has commissioned formal studies. Whatever you believe about Bashar, the world has moved exactly in the direction he described, from ridicule toward open official attention. He also said that starting around 2020, humanity's political landscape would convulse, and that between 2024 and 2030, our economic system would be replaced by something new and simpler. That after 2020, a space race would erupt among nations, echoing the 1960s, and that between 2020 and 2030, inventions once thought impossible would spring up like mushrooms after rain. Well, look at the competition among great powers today to return to the moon and reach Mars. Look at what artificial intelligence has done in just the last few years. Then there were the stranger ones. That between roughly 2020 and 2025, humanity would confirm the existence of Atlantis through the discovery of its final records, rewriting the history books and convincing the public that advanced prehistoric civilizations were real. That lost books from the Great Library of Alexandria would come to light, and that after this recovery of forgotten knowledge, humanity would enter a new golden age, which Westerners might even call the New Atlantean Age. Those, as far as anyone can tell, have not happened. I told you I'd be honest about which is which. But it is curious that the Golden Age idea keeps surfacing. The astrologer Anand has argued the world began crossing into a new age around 2020. Hamilton Parker has spoken of the Kali Yuga, the dark age of Hindu cosmology, drawing to its close. And Bashar said that 2024 would be the year human consciousness begins to awaken, and the year Earth's technology accelerates beyond its old limits, with not only our civilization, but his own speeding up together. He insisted, though, that technology alone upgrades nothing. The growth of consciousness matters more. Look inward more, he said. Choose love, kindness, gratitude. Let go of what is not truly you, resentment, blame, the bottomless chase for money and fame. You never actually needed those things. And if we make it, by around 2050, Bashar said, humanity will be ready, and the interstellar alliance of this galaxy will accept Earth as its newest member civilization. We will finally learn the true history of our planet. The civilizations the West has whispered about for centuries, Atlantis, Lemuria. We will receive, his words, a formal education from the galactic civilization, and understand our past, the universe, and creation itself. One final prediction, and it's a sobering one. Over the next half-century, he said, Earth's climate will swing hard. Glaciers will melt, and sea levels will rise 30 to 50 feet, peaking around the 2050s to 2060s before the planet cools again and the ice returns. Nothing unnatural about it, he said. Earth has cycled this way many times. The only real trouble is that some of our great coastal cities will not be livable, and people will need to move to higher ground for a while. More than 40 years of conversations, some predictions that look eerily on target, some that missed, and some whose deadline is only months away as you watch this. If 2027 really is the acceleration year, we won't have to wait long to find out, which brings us to the third story. Because while channelers' talk and prophecies simmer, in September of 2023, something physical, something you could photograph and X-ray, was carried into a national legislature. On September 12, 2023, at a special hearing of the Mexican Congress, a man named Jaime Maussan presented two rectangular boxes. When his assistants lifted the lids, cameras around the world focused on two small, desiccated, gray bodies, each barely 2 feet long, like figures from a storybook about tiny people. Oversized heads, out of all proportion to their bodies. Eyes, nose, mouth, vaguely human if you squinted. Skulls shaped like nothing familiar. Not quite human. And yet the skeletons, the ribs, the limbs unmistakably human-like. The room went silent, and Maussan swore, before congressmen and journalists, that these were the remains of extraterrestrial beings. The world went into a frenzy. Every major outlet carried the story, and every major outlet asked the same 3 questions. Who is this man? Where did these bodies come from? And are they real? Jaime Maussan was a veteran journalist with TV Azteca, Mexico's second-largest network, and a lifelong devoted UFO enthusiast. And here's where I have to tell you about his record, because it matters. In 2015, Maussan had promoted a supposed alien body that was later shown to be the mummified remains of a human child. That episode followed him into that 2023 hearing like a shadow, and his critics have never let him forget it. But this time, Maussan came armed. He cited radiocarbon dating, performed with the National Autonomous University of Mexico, which he said showed the specimens to be around 1,000 years old, and the bodies had a discovery story, one that sounds like an adventure novel. Peru, 2017. A long, narrow country pressed against the Pacific, sliced from north to south by the Andes. West of the mountains, a mild coastal plain. East, the Amazon jungle. And in between, high desert plateaus, dry as bone. In the southern Andes, there is a barren mountain area where, at the start of this century, gold was reported. A mining company bought the rights, but that didn't stop waves of freelance prospectors from scrambling up the slopes, hoping to grab a little fortune before the bulldozers arrived. One of them was a young man named Julio. He'd been wandering the site for days and found nothing, not a fleck. Food was running out. He decided to give it one last morning. By noon, still nothing, and the sun was brutal, so he ducked into a cave to rest. And as he sat there in the dim light, his prospector's eye caught a bulge in the cave wall. He crossed over and started digging with his hands. The material was soft, a white, powdery substance. And beneath it, he uncovered something that made his tongue go stiff. A sandy hollow, and inside it, 9 small, impossibly strange bodies. The very bodies, some of them, that would appear before the Mexican Congress 6 years later. Julio had never seen anything like them, but he knew treasure when he saw it. He forgot all about the gold, packed the bodies with extreme care, and headed home. Word spread fast, and no one moved faster than Jaime Maussan. He arrived with a producer from a documentary channel, a physician, and a biologist from a Peruvian university. Their examination produced a series of claims. That white powder was diatomaceous earth, a natural desiccant with powerful antibacterial and insect-repelling properties, which is why the bodies had mummified instead of rotting. In other words, if these were real remains, someone had deliberately and skillfully preserved them. The team's doctor reported that X-rays showed a skull and brain structure unlike any known human type. Each body had just 3 fingers on each hand and 3 toes on each foot. One appeared to be female, with 3 egg-shaped objects visible inside the abdomen, and a metallic implant in the chest bone. And the biologist claimed DNA analysis matched only about 25% with known human genomes, with the remaining 75% unidentified. Maussan had one more reason for his confidence, and it's the most evocative of all: location. About 40 miles from that mountain lies one of the most bewildering archaeological sites on Earth. In 1927, a Peruvian archaeologist named Mejia Cespi was surveying the high desert near Nazca, an area so dry that traces thousands of years old survive on the ground untouched. Walking south across the plateau, he noticed lines of carefully placed stones, pale gravel laid over the dark red ground beneath, running in patterns he couldn't decipher. He recorded them as ceremonial paths and moved on, baffled. Then, a few years later, around 1930, one of Peru's first small commercial aircraft flew over the plateau. A passenger glanced out the window and cried out. From above, those stone lines formed colossal drawings. A bird nearly 1,000 feet long, a lizard stretching 600 feet, a monkey over 400. Across a strip of empty desert some 30 miles long, hundreds of figures, along with straight lines running for miles, crisscrossing to no obvious purpose. The world named them the Nazca Lines, and the world was stunned. Archaeologists eventually dated them to a span from several centuries before Christ to around the 10th century, and some proposed they were a giant calendar. The great bird's beak aligned toward the sunrise, its tail toward the sunset, guiding planting and harvest. But the calendar theory had an awkward problem, and skeptics pounced on it. If you want a calendar, carve it on a stone you can read. Why build one visible only from the sky, in an age with no flight? And how did people on the ground lay out a 1,000-foot bird with edges that run straight as a ruler? Into that silence stepped Erich von Däniken, champion of the ancient astronaut hypothesis, with an infamous suggestion. The lines, he argued, were landing markers, built by different groups of extraterrestrial craft to guide their descent onto the Andes and to distinguish one base from another. And, he noted, the visitors may have left a self-portrait. Among the figures is a humanoid shape with enormous round eyes, remarkably like the big-headed, small-bodied gray beings of modern UFO lore. Serious archaeologists reject all of this, and you should know that. But among UFO believers in Peru, the idea became gospel. It's why Julio the Prospector instantly suspected his little bodies were no ordinary mummies. And it's why Mawson felt sure that bodies found in a cave so close to Nazca had to be connected to visitors from the stars. His grand narrative goes like this. From the 6th century before Christ until about 1,000 years ago, different extraterrestrial groups monitored the Earth, parking their craft on the empty Andean plateaus, quietly observing our civilization. And when they finally withdrew, one group buried its dead companions in that cave, leaving behind in the desert stones the image of a small gray figure, a message that we were never alone. That's the story told by the believers. Now for the other side, because it hit hard and fast. A Russian website claimed a paleontologist, studying the X-rays from the hearing broadcasts, had declared the bodies composites, assembled from human, bird, and animal bones. Other critics insisted the elongated skulls were actually the brain cases of llamas, and side by side, the resemblance is real, though seamlessly fusing a llama brain case to a child's skull without visible joins would itself be quite a feat. NASA was more careful. Its experts said, in effect, we don't know whether these are extraterrestrial, and we have no basis to conclude they are not. But let qualified institutions study them directly. A polite public dare. Then, in early 2024, forensic specialists in Peru went further, announcing that similar specimens they examined were modern fabrications, dolls assembled from animal bones and synthetic glue. Mawson's camp rejected that finding. Other physicians insist the Congress specimens show coherent anatomy, real trauma, and no evidence of assembly, and the dispute has spilled into hearings and lawsuits still unresolved as I speak. At the original hearing, one of Mawson's Peruvian colleagues made an emotional point. He said he knew scientists would line up to denounce the find, just as they had before. And then he asked, how many analyses, how many samples, how many studies did those scientists perform on these bodies before issuing their verdicts? 0. Nothing. So where does that leave us? Since no authoritative third party has settled the matter to everyone's satisfaction, let me lay out the 4 ways this can go. Possibility 1. Maussan never submits the bodies for full independent examination, keeps touring and presenting, and lets the mystery ride. If that happens, you can reasonably file this one under fake. Possibility 2. He submits them, multiple qualified institutions cross-check, and the verdict is fabrication. Animal and human bones cleverly assembled. That wouldn't just close the case. It would expose something arguably more disturbing, a hidden market manufacturing and selling fake alien bodies. Possibility 3. He submits them, and the tests come back genuine, an unknown biological entity. History rewritten in a single announcement, the urban legend of the ages confirmed, and the slow, careful public introduction of other civilizations begins. In that world, 2023 gets remembered as year 1 of the cosmic era. Possibility 4, and it's subtler. He submits them, and the experts hedge. They find no clear evidence of forgery, but fasten onto small anomalies, a finger joint that looks too human, asymmetries in the skeleton, and decline to say what the bodies are. If that happens, read between the lines. It would suggest the specimens are some creature science hasn't cataloged, but that no institution wants to stand in front of that particular firing squad. And here's the thought I want to leave you with. Even if these bodies turn out to be merely an unknown creature and not visitors from the stars, that alone would be an earthquake for science. Because whatever they are, they were still walking, or crawling, or being carefully buried in diatomaceous earth as recently as 1,000 years ago. A woman who said she came from Venus and a planet science now admits was once a water world. A messenger speaking through a California man whose 40-year-old predictions keep brushing up against our headlines, with his biggest deadline, 2027, almost upon us. And 2 small bodies in glass cases that the world's institutions still cannot, or will not, fully explain. Maybe they're 3 unrelated tales, or maybe they're 3 glimpses of one truth that keeps trying to surface. So tell me, which of the 4 possibilities do you think is most likely for those bodies in Mexico City? Or do you see a 5th that I missed? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read them all, and the best theories from this community have a way of ending up in future episodes. That's where we'll leave it today. Thank you for spending this time with me, exploring the unknown. Until next time, keep looking up.